Are you thinking of becoming a pilot in the year 2026? 2025 has been a very difficult year for aviation, and that's because of all the accidents and stuff that has happened. We have a ton of them, whether in the US or whether outside of the US. So we do have a mix of all these events, and they can be very discouraging to those who are aspiring to be pilots. But I know that a lot of you may still have the desire to pursue aviation as a career. So let's talk about some of the things that you probably want to know and that may help you in deciding if you should start your training in the year 2026. Now, why do you think becoming a pilot is a good thing? Well, you can really go on Google and do a lot of search and a lot of videos. We share, the lifestyle of pilots. But I'm just going to mention a few for you in this video. One of the things that is really catching a lot of attention right now is the competitive pay that a lot of airlines do offer. And that is coming from regionals to the major airlines. And that is because, well, when there is a need for pilots, there will be need to increase wages to attract pilots. And that is generally how that goes. And as long as this continues, that trend of needing pilots and airplanes needing to fly, well, pilots will continue to reap the benefits of competitive pay. The other thing is long-term job security. After some time, a particular industry may prefer to lay off the senior guys and keep the junior guys. But with the airline industry, it's quite different. And that is because a lot of airlines do operate based on union representation, and that often helps to keep the job a lot more stable and safe, even for the people that have been there for a long time. So that means that the senior you become, generally speaking, the safer your job is. So in terms of follows, in terms of retention and things like that, the senior you are, the better your life becomes. Another thing, in addition to being senior and longevity with an airline, is your schedule. A lot of times we want to have some flexibility, we want to have some control over the schedule that we fly or that we have. A lot of jobs do not offer that because, let's say it's a 9-to-5 type of job. It's 9 to 5, you get your 2 weeks out of the year, and maybe that's it. And of course, maybe you can get some pay time off or unpaid time off. We can go into all of that. But with the airline industry, the senior you are, the better your schedule becomes because you can actually pick the schedule you want. Think about being number one in the company. That means that you can actually pick exactly where you want to go at the exact date, and just the preferences are really yours to make. And that can be very attractive to a lot of people who have experienced this lack of flexibility with other type of career and job. The other thing to mention when it comes to the life of a pilot that can be very attractive to people is the fact that you get to travel to different places for work, but at the same time, the benefit of being able to fly outside of work and go to different places, that can be very attractive to people who want to see the different parts of the world. And that makes the job very interesting because on your time off or your vacation, you can actually take the benefit of being able to fly for free, for most part, to different parts of the world. So that can be very attractive. And another thing to mention is that as a pilot, every day isn't the same. Every flight isn't the same. The crew you work with won't be the same. And that can make it very interesting. We all like things to be different sometimes, not too different that it becomes a bit annoying, but just different that you're going to different places, different destinations, different approaches, and all of that mixed together can make the job a little bit more interesting over different careers that are out there. These are the reasons why a lot of people want to become pilots. They see all these things that are very attractive. But the challenge that we see is that the cost of becoming a pilot can be very expensive. As we know, anytime you're thinking of going into flight training, you're looking at thousands upon thousands of dollars for training. And if we look back over the years, the cost of training has actually been increasing. I think the last number that I've seen out there is a range of around 70,000 to maybe 120,000 and even maybe higher depending on where you're training. So the point here is it is very expensive to train. Now, this video isn't going to go into details about how you can, complete your training as cheap as possible. That isn't the purpose of this video, so I'm not going to go into that. But if you're interested in that, you can check out the video at the top here. If it's not there, just check out my channel. I'm sure you'll find it there. I've talked about this a few times. Now, the next thing is what is really going on in the aviation industry right now. Let's talk about the overall demand for pilots. One of the things that really happened after COVID was the fact that a lot of airlines did lay off a lot of people, and that led to a shortage when the recovery started. So a lot of airlines needed to fly, a lot of airplanes were coming out of the yards. And due to the lack of pilots, a lot of airlines had to pretty much attract the best talents out there, and they are still filling those positions even up until now. Now, the reality is that we've seen a very slow decline in the number of hiring that has occurred, but a lot of airlines are still hiring up until now, and that is due to the fact that a lot of people are actually retiring. Some of the numbers out there, if you go to the major airlines in the US particularly, whether it's United, American, Delta, a lot of people are retiring from these airlines, and according to some numbers out there, they are estimating around 20,000 or so pilots will retire in the next 5 to 10 years. That is a lot of people who will be retiring, reaching the age 65, and this does not account for people that will retire early, people that will maybe go out of medical and things like that. So the point here is a lot of people are going to retire in the coming years. What does this mean? That means that this gap will need to be filled and something will need to be done. And of course, we're already seeing that happen right now. One of the things that you also need to remember is that airlines are always forward-looking, right? Assuming things stay the same, they are hiring based on those numbers, based on the expectations of people that will retire and the like. So they need to remain staffed properly in order to handle the seasonal changes in passenger flying and the likes. One of the things that you need to also understand is that the aviation industry has actually gone through a lot of turbulence, all right? A lot of things has happened in 2025, as I've mentioned. But to also add to that, we had a recent UPS crash, and that has led to grounding of the MD-11 freighter airplanes. And the reality is that a lot of pilots are being affected by this reality. The other thing also to mention is we just saw in the news about 2 days ago, Airbus trying to fix some software issue on the Airbus 320, I think. And the reality is that all of this will always come up, but the aviation industry has just remained resilient. If we go back to a lot of incidents and accidents that has happened, right, which I won't mention all of them, the reality is that all of this has not been an issue for the aviation industry in terms of the need for pilots. Now, I think it's important to mention a few things that could derail these expectations or forecasts that we see out there. For example, Boeing actually mentioned that about 673,000 pilots will be needed between 2024, I believe, to 2043. And the reality is that, yes, those are expectations based on growth of different regions and the need for airplanes and, of course, pilots. But a lot of things could happen that could change those expectations or projections. Now, one of the first things will be economic downturn. As we know, the world has been dealing with inflation, and this has caused the cost of goods and services to increase over time. This is putting a lot of pressure on, of course, the low income and the middle class as well. So this is something that really could get out of hand if the necessary government in different regions do not take seriously. Now, the next thing is fuel prices will continue to be a big factor when it comes to an airline remaining stable. And that means that as long as the fuel prices remain stable and relatively cheap, airlines will continue to fly and expand. The next thing is regulatory changes. One of the things that we've seen lately is the plans to try to increase the retirement age from 65 to 67. However, the good thing for people who are already in the aviation industry is that they actually rejected the proposal by the ICAO, and that proposal was actually turned down. Now, of course, this can be a good thing depending on which side you're on. The next thing is the airline business model shifts. For example, the cargo industry is actually going through a significant change as we see it. A lot of competition is really rising in different parts of the world, and that could mean lower profit margins for this cargo industry. But of course, the airline industry is also saying similar things. But as long as you stay on top of your game, for most of these airlines, that shouldn't be a problem. Like I said, one of the biggest challenges to aviation is funds for training. And that means that if you are in a position that you cannot raise funds, this can actually still make it difficult for you to achieve your dreams of becoming a pilot. So what should you ask yourself if you want to start training, right? A few things. Are you prepared mentally, all right, and financially? That is, those two will go hand in hand, because remember, when they mess with you financially, you will be mentally affected as well. So the reality is that if you can really work on your finances, that would keep you mentally focused on training. The other thing is, are you ready to commit to building the these pilot competencies that I talk about. If you're somebody who is interested in going through cadet programs, they will test you on your competencies: leadership, decision-making, situational awareness, airplane flight path management skills, and things like that. All of this will be very important. And the other thing also is that, are you flexible to go with any airline to get experience? Or are you flexible in going through the route of a CFI, right, to get your hours? Those are the ways in which you can really quickly ramp up your hours to get you to the flight deck as soon as you can. Remember, this window of opportunity will change year to year. Number of retirements will change, but the point remains that the airline industry still looks like a viable option for a lot of people. Now, with all of this said, right, remember, the goal is to continue to share this type of information with you, and hopefully you can use this information to your own advantage and make decisions that are best for you.